Again, thank you all for being here today. We're excited to launch our first fleet-to-fleet tech talk, and we're very honored to have Matt Stalsberg, the owner of Ace Recycling, and his lead mechanic and fleet manager, Jason Clegg, and his sustainability director, Mercedes Anto. So we're very happy to have the Ace team with us today, and excited to hear what they are willing to share with us. It's there's nothing like real world fleet and an actual experience when we start talking about advanced and alternative fuels. So next slide, please. So again, I want to welcome you. I'm Tammie Bostick. I'm the director of Utah Clean Cities. Utah Clean Cities has been in Utah for over 26 years. In fact, it ties into some of the things that we'll talk about today with federal legislation. The first legislation that came into play was the Clean Air Act in 1975. And that followed the oil crisis with OPEC and the lack of oil and gasoline at the pump. And it really made Americans aware that we were highly dependent on imported oil. At that time, we were importing almost 90% of our petroleum into the United States. And we saw that crunch when those things changed. So in an effort to increase energy security stateside and to use stateside fuels and technologies, the Clean Air Act kicked off the beginnings of the federal legislation that came forward. And there are like 14 major legislative pieces that have happened since then, including the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, which Matt was part of. Started in 2009. And of course, there's current legislation that we all enjoy today. So we're very excited to be part of that. Utah Clean Cities is part of the Department of Energy Vehicle Technologies program. And again, this is our 27th year of being an organization, a standalone nonprofit. And we're happy to continue the good work that started back in the 90s with the Clean Cities formation of the programs. There are almost 100 clean cities across the nation. So it's a really great opportunity for us to do regional projects with our regional states and to build out corridors, not only in our region, but across the nation, which is an exciting piece of working with advanced technologies, because along with the vehicles, you have to have the infrastructure to fuel them. And Matt will be talking about both of those today. So essentially, the Utah Clean Cities Coalition is to advance the energy, economic, and environmental security of the United States by supporting local decisions. Big emphasis on local decisions. We decide as this state what fuels we want to support, what work best for us. For example, you will barely find a drop of ethanol in Utah, but you will find a whole lot of it in the Midwest because that's their fuel. And then we use local decision making to adopt practices that work for us to reduce petroleum and, of course, the emissions from them in the transportation sector. So Utah Clean Cities, our mission is to use clean fuels, to establish clean strategies, and to promote clean air. And we're really excited to, in 2021, we launched a new Green Fleets program called Beyond Zero Green Fleets, and we can talk a little bit more about that. But I want you to be thinking about this as you move forward with your fleets, what it would be like to be part of an association like Utah Clean Cities, associated with folks like Matt who are running successful fleets, and to be able to tag your fleet as a green fleet working to beyond zero emissions into the future. So let's go to the next slide, please. So I would like to do speaker introductions and do a little bit of housekeeping. You see our agenda for today. And so our speakers this morning are Jason Clegg. Jason, raise a hand. Matt Stalsberg. Myself, of course. And then Mercedes Anto. Thank you. And so we're so delighted to have these folks spending their afternoon and lunchtime with us. It's a great opportunity. So again, I'm the moderator. Keynote speaker is Matt. He's going to be leading us through this hour-and-a-half discussion, and we want it to be engaging and active. And then, of course, we have Jason, who's the Fleet Projects and Training Administrator. And then we have Mercedes Anto, who's the Sustainability Director. We've enjoyed working with Mercedes over the years. She's fantastic. So thanks for being with us, Mercedes, as well. Next slide. So I just wanted to go over a few natural gas basics with y'all, and it may be 101 and you may already know this, but I'm a big fan of natural gas. It's just one of the cleanest alternative fuels that we have out there. And currently, when you compare it to any alternative fuels, it is the cleanest from when we talk about wells to wheels. So we talk about where the energy is created and what's the final emission piece. It's really tough to beat natural gas. And so I love this slide. And this was shown to me when I first started at Clean Cities years ago. What we're looking at when we burn carbon. So you look at diesels and it's burning 16 carbons. And that's why it's a powerful fuel. And, you know, for those in the trucking industry in general, I mean, aside from the emissions, diesel is a powerful fuel, and that's why people like it. For heavy duty equipment, it's a tough one to beat. And then you look at regular gasoline, it has 8 carbons, and then natural gas has 1. So of course, when we look at that, you can immediately say, okay, well, where would what fuel would I use to do a barbecue? And that's probably one of the best visuals that I have is when you think about propane and natural gas, they're such a clean fuel. We burn them in our homes, and it certainly makes an excellent clean transportation fuel, which then, of course, adds that benefit of maintenance. So again, we talk about energy security, and I mentioned that before, back in 1975 when we had the oil crisis and what that looked like. And again, we were importing upwards of 90% of our oil. Now we are importing 3% of our oil in the United States. But to that point, 70% of the oil that we do use is used in the transportation sector. So we're still really heavily dependent on oil for transportation. Vehicle performance. I'm going to pretty much pass this on to Matt, but I can say with dedicated engines with natural gas today, they're the best they've ever been. And so we're excited with the new technologies and the near zero emissions engines that are on the market today. And Matt actually has them in his fleet, so he'll be able to talk about them. So that's really exciting. Lower emissions. Natural gas is a fantastic urban fuel, and especially, and Matt can speak to that as well, when you're doing a lot of stopping and starting and idling, you know, natural gas is really tough to beat as far as just a fantastic fuel and how it performs and the emissions. One of the greatest things about natural gas, not only with transportation, but in the whole energy sector, is when they started to transfer away from coal-fired plants and using natural gas, we watched the NOx emissions overall in the United States drop dramatically. And so we can attribute that to the clean burning fuel of natural gas. And we owe a great debt of gratitude for that clean fuel really making a big impact in our air quality that we have seen today. So we continue to see that grow, especially with renewables. We're very excited about the renewable proposals that are out there looking at replacing transportation fuels with renewables. Again, it's a hard model to beat with any kind of technology that we have on the market today. It's a really winning opportunity for those of you who are considering greening up your fleet. Infrastructure and vehicle availability. Right now there are over 500 alternative fuel vehicles on the market, and they continue to grow. There's some really, and then so we have some resources at the end of this presentation where you can actually get on and look at the manufacturers, look at the type of vehicle that you're looking for, and you'll be able to find that information directly yourself and make a comparison of vehicles across the line. So that's another great opportunity. So with that, I'm going to go to the next slide. So real quickly, I do want to say that you have an opportunity to raise your hand at any point during this. Also put your questions into the chat box, and we'll help manage those with Jason and Matt, so you can in real time ask questions. So don't hesitate to raise your hand and say, hey, I want a little bit more information about that. If it goes beyond our timing, then we might move you to a more private conversation. But again, we want this to be interactive. Let us know your thoughts, your pain points, your concerns. That's what we're here for. It's not just to greenwash or whitewash any particular technology. Both Jason and Matt are here to be honest with you and let you, you can decide at the end of it what you think about it and whether you'd like to pursue looking at this fuel a little bit more closely. So with that, Matt, with great relief, I'm glad to pass it on to you. Thank you.
Welcome, 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 everyone. I just want to say thanks very much for attending this webinar and discussion. This is really a discussion. We would love to hear your questions. Once again, as Tammie mentioned, just click on the raise your hand button if you have any questions. My name's Matt Stalsberg. I'm the general manager and owner here. And I can honestly say that getting into compressed natural gas has been the best business decision we've made in the last 10 years. So with that, I spoke with Tammie. My position on the Utah Clean Cities board, I feel like I am there to help represent fleets. So that's what I'm trying to do is help everybody else that runs fleets get more familiar with CNG trucks and potentially building your own station. So I'll go through those 2 slides today. I wanted to point out that there's some significant benefits to running CNG because it kind of has a bad name right now. Compressed natural gas has lost its luster a little bit. And what if I told you that all of the garbage that we dump in the landfills is then digested and used to power our trucks? It's a pretty amazing cycle. As garbage biodegrades, it produces gas, and we can actually run that gas in our trucks. That technology exists right now, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're buying gas that's produced from landfills to power our fleet. So we're completing the cycle right now. It's pretty exciting. I'm geeking out a little bit about it, and this is a really cool topic because it's amazing. Renewable natural gas has brought a whole new element to the excitement of gas. So I want to share that with you before we start our talk. And today on this slide, I'm going to be talking about truck specifications. So these trucks are very similar to a diesel, but the major difference is the powertrain. They're powered by 100% natural gas fueled engines. These are not hybrid engines. I just want to make sure that's very clear. Cummins is the major platform producer of 100% natural gas engine. As you can see there, they make the L9, the ISX12N, and the B6.7N. For our fleet, we use the ISX12N. In the beginning, we bought the L9, so the 9-liter and a 12-liter engine. The difference in those is the size of the truck. We prefer the ISX12 because it has less maintenance issues and it has the power we need to power a 54,000-pound vehicle. So your fleet may be different. And I want to make sure that you guys know I am available at any time if you want to call me about any questions regarding your fleet and how you could use CNG as well. Tanks. Tanks range from 50 diesel gallon equivalent to 250. I have not seen any 250 diesel gallon equivalent running around here, but it is a tremendous amount of real estate on a truck to put that many gallon equivalents. If you'll notice those pictures off to the right side, you can see a large black box behind the cab on the one above, and that is the CNG tank. It's quite large, and that's a 80 gallon capacity tank. And then the picture down below, they can mount them on top of the body, and you can see it towards the rear of the truck, that red box right above the sign, and that is about a 75 diesel gallon equivalent there. And once again, I just want to remind everybody, if you have any questions on any of this stuff, just raise your hand and Emily will unmute you. So how much weight do these tanks actually cost you? Because we all know how important payload is to what we do in trucking in our fleets. And I estimate it's about 20 pounds per diesel gallon equivalent. So those tanks that you can see on my trucks over there weigh about close to 1,100 pounds, maybe 1,200 pounds. I wanted to point out too that Cummins provides a newsletter that if you're currently running a CNG fleet, you would benefit so much from subscribing to this newsletter. They give little tips and tricks all the time on general maintenance or some troubleshooting or recalls or new products. So that that email is listed right there. The gentleman's name that puts it out is Hugh Donnell. And if you guys want to write down that email, you can just email him and ask to subscribe to his natural gas newsletter. Moving along, Utah, this is new legislation within the last 2 years. Because electric vehicles or CNG vehicles weigh a little bit more, like I said, the tanks weigh a little bit more. Because they weigh more, they have issued an allowance for alternative fuel vehicles for an additional 2,000 pounds. So for example, my trucks that you see here, they are registered most likely for 54,000 pounds. Now, because I put CNG on them, I would actually get less payload. So the state is trying to make up for that, and they're allowing you an additional 2,000 pounds to make up for that because they don't want you to be discouraged from going with an alternative fuel. So I actually get a 56,000 pound allowance on those trucks. And those certificates or plaques can be printed from the state websites. A question that I commonly get is, what is the life expectancy of a CNG truck compared to diesel? We've been running these trucks since 2008. That's when we first got into CNG. And a big thing to notate here, the big takeaway is we're still running those trucks every day. Some of them may be spares, but we still have 12-year-old trucks in our fleet that run every day. They're going to be very, very similar to the, in terms of dollars, to a diesel truck, especially a new diesel. I don't know if everybody, I mean, I really don't like the new diesels. I'm sure everybody would agree with me on that, that's still running diesels, because they're so restricted on the DPF and the urea systems. They cost so much to clean those DPFs. The regen cycles are difficult. Everything is difficult with the new diesel. So I feel that they're on the same platform in terms of their maintenance costs as a diesel. And finally, you know, everybody knows how much more money they are. And that's what a huge deterrent to getting into CNG is, how much more money these trucks are compared to your diesel. And you can see down there at the very bottom, spending an additional $30,000 to $50,000 on a truck can be a very, very difficult thing to swallow. The majority of the cost there is in the tanks that you guys can see from the pictures. That is the bulk of the additional cost. The engines cost a little bit more, but nothing too significant compared to a diesel. So as an effort for the state to alleviate that tax or that cost, they've introduced a tax credit, and it's quite substantial. So if you buy a heavy duty vehicle, and a heavy duty vehicle is anything over 33,000 pounds. If you buy a heavy duty vehicle for your fleet, the state right now is allowing you $15,000 tax credit. Mercedes could speak more to that, or you could call Tammie or Emily to get the specifics, but that is in the state legislature right now. I utilized it last year. It's a great incentive, and you only have to provide a few documents, and you get a nice little certificate from the state of Utah for a tax credit. And that tax credit, even if you can't use it that year, you can carry it forward to existing years. So those are some of the largest specifications and details regarding your fleet in terms of purchasing a truck. Do you guys have any questions for me before I move on to the next slide?
We do have one question from Christopher Hussey. When considering CNG, what was the driving force of switching? What was the ROI? What is your cost per mile, similar to diesel. And then without the tax credit, should we switch?
Great questions. Great questions, Chris. The driving force between switching over from diesel to CNG, I'm a fleet owner, so I have to watch out for all the employees that I help support here, which means I need to make good financial decisions, right? And that was a very large majority of our decision. Clean air is also a huge part. We want to be, our job is to clean up the environment. That's what we do. We collect garbage. So we want to make sure that we're doing everything else we can to keep the air clean. In terms of the dollars, I could tell you I spend about $2,000 on the fuel for my diesel trucks each month, and I spend $1,000 for the fuel on my CNG trucks. Literally, our fuel is half the cost or more. And when I get into a fueling station, that's when you see the unbelievable benefits. Now, if you're currently fueling at the pump at $1.75 for CNG, it's going to be, it's a pretty difficult change to make. So a large part of the benefit that you get from CNG is having your own fueling station. That's when you really see the benefits. And I'll go over that in my next slide. But Chris, did that answer your question, or do you have any further questions?
Not saying anything else.
Okay.
But if you do have any other questions, Chris, please do not hesitate to write them down in Q&A, raise your hand, or in the chat.
So the return on investment, Chris, right now with diesel prices where they are is about 3.5 years, because you're comparing it to diesel. And diesel was actually pretty cheap this year. If diesel fuel climbs up to $3.50, the return is quite a bit faster. But with these trucks lasting 10 years, at least what we run them, the benefits are significant after 3 to 4 years.
Okay, and then the last one he was saying is the tax credit. Without the tax credit, should we switch?
If you're a state agency or a government agency and you're not going to benefit from the state tax credit, absolutely, you still want to switch. You're going to be saving our taxpayers money, going to what I would consider to be a more responsible fuel. This is a fuel that's produced in our states that we buy locally, and it also saves you day-to-day operating money because it's a cheaper fuel. And you'll benefit so much more if you go to the station. So if you are looking at a fleet, you can start a station as small as 5 trucks. That's what we started with. Lancer Energy provides great options for fueling stations at a very reasonable cost, and they can get you in at just about any size. Any other questions before we move to the next slide?
I'm not seeing anything, Matt, but I
Okay.
will let you know if there's anything that comes up.
Okay, let's move to the next slide. Okay, this slide, this is like the boom, here goes the dynamite slide. This is it. This is the #1 reason why you're going to want to go to CNG, and that is building your own station. You get unbelievable benefits from building your own station. And the biggest one is your fuel cost. Can anybody tell me, or does anybody know how much a bulk gallon of fuel is? So a diesel gallon equivalent, how much does it cost for compressed natural gas? How much is a CNG gallon when you buy it on the bulk market? I don't know if we can get anybody to answer in on that.
I don't see anyone right now.
Well, all right, I'm just gonna go ahead and tell you then. 50 cents. It's actually, depending on how much gas you buy, it can get cheaper than that. but 50 cents a gallon is the cost for bulk fuel. Now, why is it so much at the station? You know, why is it $1.75 at the station? There's a lot of other costs that go along with getting it to the end user that the station passes along. And we'll go over this in our goal is to go over this in our next fleet talk. But I've built a great return on investment sheet that shows you your exact costs that you can expect to pay. And that's in our next session. And I could definitely email that sheet to you as well. If you're looking to build your own station, it outlays all the capital costs and your operating costs. And you're going to look at, I spend $1 per gallon all in. So the fuel cost me 50 cents to buy in the bulk market. You can buy it from all types of suppliers, you know, people like BP, or our local group here, Summit Energy, is a fuel supplier here. And after that, it costs a lot of money to get it into your trucks. In the picture over here on the left, you can see this is a compressor, and the fuel comes right out of the street, and it goes, so your utility line in your street at your facility, they'll pipe it right into your compressor, and you compress the gas into tanks that slowly fill your trucks overnight. So you're not paying a driver to sit there fueling up his truck at the end of the day, or the long wait times that you have at a CNG gas station. The other benefit that you get from using the compressor is you get cooler fuel. Believe it or not, when you go to a gas station and you're running a hot compressor and it's compressing gas, you get hot gas. You're going to get less money for your fill. So as you let the trucks fill slowly overnight, the gas has time to cool and you get higher compression. You get more PSI. And that's, you know, that's a little bit of science behind going to your own station. But a lot of people don't get into their own station because the costs are pretty significant. But still, even with the cost of your station built in, roughly $10,000 to $13,000 per truck that you put in that's what your station's going to cost you. The return on your investment is still within that 3 to 4 year time. And the station, I mean, our station, our same compressor has been running now for 10 years or 9 years essentially. So all we have to do is a simple rebuild on it within the next maybe 2 years that could cost us another $15,000 for a top half rebuild. And Jason's the wizard on that. You know, you guys can quiz him on any of those questions as well, but the return is well worth it. Now, those are the reasons, those are the overall reasons to get into your own fueling station. Some of the things that I've outlined here, I see a couple questions coming in. I'll stop there. And Emily, you want to read off that question?
Yes, perfect. Is there an upcharge for RNG? Is it worth it to switch to RNG if it's more expensive, additional tax credits?
Great question. RNG, what is the difference between buying CNG and RNG? It's all really the same gas. RNG, depending on who your fuel supplier is, RNG is going to cost relatively the same as your compressed natural gas from another source. Most suppliers will charge the same amount of money. The difference is a lot of the people, they pass on the credit. So when you produce renewable natural gas, the federal government gives the producers what's called a RIN credit. And these RIN credits are traded on the market. And without getting too complicated, I'll just keep it simple. The bulk fuel suppliers give you a break on your fuel. So when they go to trade in their RIN credits, they'll actually give you a check back. So that's what we receive right now. Being a RNG fuel user, we will get a check back from our supplier that's basically thank you for buying this RNG fuel, and here's your piece back. And it amounts to maybe, you know, depending on who it is, it amounts to roughly 4 cents a gallon in that case. I hope that answered that question. Renewable natural gas is the same as natural gas. There's no additional risk to putting it in your trucks. It has to meet specific quality measurements to make it into the pipelines. So if you want to build your own station, if you're a business owner, there's never been a better time to build your own station because you can depreciate the entire station in 1 year. Bonus depreciation has been around, the current administration increased it from the Obama administration to 100%. It was 50% and now it's 100%. So meaning if you buy a fueling station for $400,000, you can use that as that entire amount as a tax deduction that first year. And normally you would have to spread that out over 5 years. So for a business owner, it's a significant advantage. For a municipal agency, it is still a great advantage because you're doing what's right for the community. You're buying a cleaner fuel, you're investing in a lower cost fuel. I can't imagine any administrative board not approving that. You're going to need to buy a fuel for your truck either way. So on top of that, the federal government gives you a $30,000 tax credit for your station infrastructure. And the number one reason, the absolute number one reason, I'm going to look at see how I'm doing on time here. The number one reason to buy a CNG station or to create your own fueling infrastructure is you get a 50-cent per gallon rebate, not a tax credit. You get a 50-cent per gallon rebate as a compressor of fuel. So if you're a station owner, the government is basically saying, hey, we know it's going to cost you some money to compress the fuel and put it in the transportation line. So we're going to make it easier for you to get into it. And they're giving you a 50-cent per gallon rebate for being a compressor of fuel. Thousands of dollars coming back to you. I don't know if I could be more serious on that one. That is a huge incentive. Everything else, you know, the basic design of a fueling station, maintenance, facility considerations, really generally very, very low maintenance systems. The real difficulty is getting people familiar with being okay with gas, you know, because, and Jason's going to go into a lot of that. Gas is, they're scared of it. So in terms of your facility, and I'll finish with this before I move on to Jason, procedures to bring your CNG facility up to code. This has also been a very, very big topic because people are scared that they're going to have to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars into their maintenance facility to be able to work on CNG trucks. And in some cases that could be true. In some cases it may not. And I'll tell you the biggest factor that they have, and Jason may be able to help with this when he speaks, but when you're designing a repair facility, you need to have enough room for gas to dissipate into the air. And they measure it with ceiling height. So how high your ceiling is of your maintenance facility, the level of room between the top of your trucks and the height of your ceiling is going to be a big indicator if you need to increase your facility. The second piece of the equation is airflow. You have to have the right amount of airflow moving through your facility to be able to move dangerous fuels out, whether it's CNG or gas fumes or whatever it may be. So those are the two largest factors. And I know I'm going to get, you know, to save everyone's questions, I'll just go ahead and tell you, we've only had to upgrade one of our facilities, and that was a very low ceiling height facility in West Jordan. We had to put an air makeup unit in there in order to work on CNG trucks. So the way those work is if we were to have a CNG leak, they have detection devices that can sense the amount of CH4 in the air. And if it's an alarming amount, it could even be diesel exhaust. The exhaust fans will kick on once it senses that, and a door will open, and it will move a tremendous amount of air through the building to exhaust that risk. That is your standard air makeup system. That's a 20,000 square foot facility, and we did have to invest about $90,000 into that air makeup system. That's been the biggest cost that we've had so far. Our other facilities have had sufficient ventilation. And you do need to take additional measurements when you pull a CNG truck into your repair bay. You know, you got to shut the fuel down, especially if there's a CNG issue. But Jason can speak more to that, and I'm going to open up the floor to any other further questions in terms of truck specs or facility or your own fueling station questions, anything like that. I hope you guys are getting value out of this. That's really what we want you guys to get from this fleet talk, and for you to learn from our experiences. Are there any questions, Emily?
I don't see any coming in right now.
Could I just get a thumbs up, like if you guys did I bore you guys to death, or what's going on? Have I got any of those yet?
You have not done any of those.
Oh my gosh. Okay, guys. I hope I didn't bore you guys to death too much. I'm going to pass the time over to Mr. Jason Clegg, and he's going to walk you through the real stuff, you know, which is, do these trucks work? And if I invest all this money in them, how much is it going to cost me to fix them? So Mr. Jason Clegg, go ahead.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Jason Clegg, and I'm Special Projects and Fleet Trainer Administrator here at Ace Disposal. I've been with Ace Disposal and Matt for 27 years, and over a decade ago, we implemented CNG into our fleet. You know, from a training standpoint, where would we go with what are the concerns of implementing CNG into a large fleet like ours? Well, right off the bat, we have to come up with issues of the misconceptions with the compressed natural gas. You know, first thing right off the bat is most people feel like it's a bomb. And that's a big misconception when we're getting ready to set up a fleet such as ours, that it's a hurdle we have to overcome. You know, to teach the guys about, and the gals, about what makes the natural gas dangerous, you know, is it the fire or is it the pressure that we're worried about? And to overcome those, it takes some training. So long story short, we hold different training classes throughout the year and continually show our new employees, you know, what to look out for when we're dealing with compressed natural gas. The fire danger isn't really our major concern. It is the pressure. When we're dealing with 3,600 PSI, and for some reason, maybe a maintenance technician or a driver was to undo a line, and the line has 3,600 full pressure in it, and the line would hit them in some way or release the gas at a real high rate of speed and come out and hurt someone, that's where we're really concerned with on the safety aspects. So talking to our drivers and talking to the technicians and teaching them the proper safety protocols along the way is of huge concern when we're setting up our fleet. you know, years ago when we first started in on this, over 10 years ago, a lot of us didn't understand the properties of the natural gas, and we didn't understand how the pressure is affected, you know, when we are working on that or when we're filling it. And so later in the discussion, we're going to talk about how PSI is related to fuel pressure and how the ambient temperature affects what's going on inside of the tanks. So by the way, at any time, just stop me. I'm just going to keep rattling on. So go ahead and stop me if you have any questions, and let's discuss it as we go along. The filling safe with the natural gas is so much of a concern that we actually have to train our technicians to watch out for certain things. We have 3 technicians currently right now that are Cng System Inspectors. And what they do is they will inspect our systems to make sure that the integrity of the system is there and there's no gas leaks, there's no issues where technicians or drivers are going to get hurt. A lot of you have heard where we have the 3-year, 36,000-mile inspection, and that is there, that we do that, and we need to do that to ensure the safety of the systems that we have on the trucks. Along with that, that is some of the training that we do with the technicians and the drivers. So, you know, along with learning about the pressures and things over the years, some of the big questions come into play, like on our next bullet point here, PRDs and truck fires. Well, if fires are not really our biggest concerns, how do we mitigate the fire danger? How does that work? And, you know, on the natural gas systems that we have here, all of them have PRDs, or pressure relief devices, and those will activate at a certain temperature if there was a fire on our trucks. If the fire is not localized to where the driver can put it out or a technician can put the fire out, and it does, you know, advance onto the tanks or around the tanks, the PRD would, in essence, release the gas out at a real high rate to remove the gas away from the situation. There's been instances where the high pressure gas released from a fire incident will put the fire out, actually. Testing a lot of the tanks, when they test the tanks at the manufacturers, they're so robust that they're able to put a loaded CNG tank inside of a fire and fire a high-powered rifle at it, and as it spins around in the bonfire, it will put the fire out. So you get the sense of how safe it is really to work around the fire situation, but the pressure is really where we concentrate a lot of our training on. You know, the drivers and mechanics and technicians really need to understand that if we unleash that full 3,600 PSI of pressure on us or around us, we're going to get hurt or we're going to damage equipment. So we keep ingraining that in everybody's thought processes as we go along. You know, we actually had a truck fire here out on the line, and the PRDs did not reach up to temperature, and they didn't release the gas, even though the trucks themselves were burned basically down to nothing, and the gas was still on the truck. So we actually had to go out and do what they call an emergency defuel and defuel the trucks right there after the fire incident happened. So, you know, if the truck fires and things are not addressed when you're doing your training and talking about setting your fleet up, that's really something that you need to address. You know, pressures and fires is something really to watch for. The next point that we wanted to discuss is the fueling nozzles. And, you know, on the fueling nozzles, that will come in hand with the drivers because they're right there on top of the fuel nozzles every day. Well, if you was to hook up your fuel nozzle, and let's say you forgot to disconnect the fuel nozzle at the beginning of your day, and you just simply drove away, are there safety protocols involved with that type of a scenario? And, you know, Lancer Energy is the one that will set our lines up, and they have special connections that are quick release, quick disconnects. When you were to pull away from the fence line, it immediately shuts the gas off in that line, and the line will stay connected to the truck and not damage anything, and you're able to reconnect them later. This goes along with the training of the drivers again, because if a driver was unaware of that situation, maybe if he was to pull away from the fence line and disconnect that, he would go into a full-blown panic without understanding what's happening there. Because what do we do when there's an emergency situation? We immediately think it's a bomb, right? And that's actually not the case. Again, we're talking about the pressure, which is our main concern. And maybe when we disconnect a line like that, it whips around. This type of thing is something that we train quite extensively on, to let them know what to expect if there was some sort of an emergency. Moving on to the next point is understanding PSI and fuel used. You know, natural gas, when we compress it onto the trucks, it changes the way the pressure is affected. Ambient temperature is extremely important in understanding the ratio of CNG PSI to fuel used. And the ratio where they start at is 70 PSI, or sorry, 70 degrees at 3,600 PSI. And there's 3 different PSI ratings out there, by the way. There's 2,000, 2,400, and 3,600. And these 3 ratings, we use the 3,600, the high pressure. And when we talk about the fuel ratios, we're talking about starting out at 70 degrees, 3,600 PSI. Well, 70 degrees, 3,600 PSI, the air temperature is always volatile and moving around and going up and down. It's rarely exactly 70 degrees at 3,600 PSI. So what we do is there's compensators in the compressor that change for ambient temperature and load the truck with the exact amount of fuel each day, no matter what the temperature is outside. So let's say that we have a 30-degree day like we do today. The compressors will compensate for that temperature and then add the correct amount of volume of fuel onto the truck. But that means that maybe when you get a fully loaded charge of fuel, you'll take a look at your gauge, and rather having 3,600, you may have 3,000 or 3,100. But you still have the same amount of volume of fuel on, and you can still go the same distance. I hope that makes sense. But that's one of our training points when we're talking to the drivers and the technicians, is that everything revolves around the 70 degrees at 3,600 PSI. And from there, then we go through. I see we have a question coming up here. Let's see if we can take a look at that question.
Yeah, perfect. How do the drivers know how much fuel he has left, or sorry, that he has used?
Oh, that's a great question. That one came from Matt. Awesome. How does the driver know how much fuel he used? Well, starting out in the day, we have a chart that we work from, and as the fuel pressure drops, we're able to transfer that into a formula for the drivers to give them the diesel gallons equivalent. So at the end of the day, they can say, you know what, I have X amount of gallons left over, and I started with X amount of gallons. So if we started at 3,100 PSI, that would be a diesel gallons equivalent of, say, 70 gallons, and then they work their way down the pressure ratings. So that's how they understand it, and that's how that works. And we're able to figure out, even we can go as far as saying, what did we get that day as far as fuel mileage? So it's a really good ratio that we work for. And in fact, Matt even has that formula and that chart. So we can, if anybody would like to see that, we can actually email that to you, or, you know, get in touch with Matt and he can get that going for you. Great question, Matt. Any other questions as we're going along? Hopefully I'm not boring you and I'm we're just kind of moving along here. The next point here is our new parts and procedures for drivers and technicians to understand. Kind of going back to that fuel nozzle scenario, you know, we also have a lot of different parts that go along with the trucks that are unlike diesel. You know, you have high pressure regulators, you have high pressure and low pressure lines, you have fuel regulators internally in the engine. We have spark plugs. We have, you know, some very unique things associated with natural gas that are not there for the diesel side of the engine makeup. That is something of concern when talking with the drivers and teaching both drivers and technicians how to address specific problems on the trucks. One just the other day, we had a new driver that was new to CNG, new to our fleet, come up and ask me, why is the side of the truck leaking antifreeze? Well, in that scenario, there is a high pressure regulator that has antifreeze piped to it to keep it warm from freezing up. And one of the little clamps was leaking from the fitting. And that's something that is of a learning curve, because normal trucks wouldn't just have antifreeze leaking from the side of the truck, where, you know, a diesel counterpart would not have anything of the sort. So new parts, new procedures for drivers and technicians, that's a key point when we're talking about the learning curve going through natural gas. Okay, if we can go to the next slide.
Yeah, before we do, we did have a question from Scott Brandenberry.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
No, it just popped up. How much more is the maintenance cost of the natural gas engine compared to diesel?
Oh, great question, Scott. You know, this is one that me and Matt have actually had quite a good, long conversations over. And initially, we were under the assumption that the natural gas seemed to be quite a bit higher on maintenance than the comparative diesel. But let's look at some of the similarities and some of the dissimilarities here real quick. So maintenance along the lines of natural gas. And I'm going to get into this on our next slide, but we have specialty oil, we have spark plugs, we have different kind of sensors and different kinds of wiring harnesses and this type of thing. Okay, now we look at diesel. Diesel on the SCR systems now has DPF, we have the catalysts, we have urea injection systems. All of those are related to the diesel side of things, and those have their own issues and expense, and everything goes along with that. You know, on a natural gas system, each day, the only fuel that you'll need is natural gas. Whereas SCR system, not only do you need diesel, you need your urea, as most of you know. And this is something that is an ongoing cost that continues the life of the vehicle. And any kind of an issue that comes up with the SCR system on the diesel side of things is going to, you know, set codes, cost money, all of that. So there are a few different aspects there, but primarily, to answer your question, Scott, they seem very, very similar. Our costs are almost exactly the same. And so really it comes down to the fuel cost. So I hope I answered that for you there, Scott. Thank you. That was a good question.
Perfect. And looks like that's all it. So I'll go to the next slide.
Okay, Scott. Yeah. So as you can see, that top point there, specialized oils and spark plugs, kind of gets back into the what are we looking at here on prices. The type of oil we use is called guard oil. And the guard oil is something that Cummins recommends that we use. It's a low sulfur type oil. It, you know, as the combustion happens in the CNG engine, a lot of ammonia is produced, and using the guard oil drops the ammonia levels. It helps with the sulfur as well. So using guard oil is something that they recommend, and it is something that we do. Price of guard oil with just a normal 1540 weight is negligible. They're both exactly the same. So, you know, using that specialized oil is of no consequence. The spark plugs change though, however. You know, the spark plugs are not a normal spark plug like it would be in an automotive application. They're an iridium type spark plug. They're more expensive. We buy them through a Cummins aftermarket company. We pay anywhere from $9 to $10 a plug. If you was to buy them straight from Cummins, they're about $40 a plug. And that's quite expensive when you're considering you're changing those on a recommended interval of every, you know, 1,500 hours. And then also with diagnostics, if we have an issue with the engine and we need to spend some spark plug time for diagnostics, that cost is going to be affected there as well. So things to consider when we're talking about natural gas and the differences between diesels and natural gas engines. One plug I'd like to just say really quick, we started out with the ISLG 8-liter engines, and we have subsequently went to the ISX 12 liters. And the ISX 12 liters have proven to be just an amazing improvement. The power, the everything that goes along with those are huge. So, and we will probably talk a little bit more about that here in a moment, but I wanted to let you in on that ISLG ISX N12 comparison. The next point here is the fuel system inspections and certifications. So I mentioned it earlier in our little webinar here that periodic inspections are extremely important. And we do the periodic inspections every 3 years or 36,000 miles. Some of those are really lengthy because you will have to expose the cylinder tanks. You have to remove some guards and things like this to expose lines and what have you. These can typically take anywhere from 4 to 8 hours to do the system inspections, which means the truck is down for that time frame. So that's something to consider when you're wanting to switch your fleet over to natural gas. A diesel fuel system really doesn't have something like that other than just simply a safety inspection. So the fuel system inspections are something to consider. Also, the certifications that we're talking about, you know, the technicians that are writing those certifications up are similar to safety inspectors. They have to go through a class. You have to become certified as a system inspector. And then each time that you do a fuel system inspection, you'll do the paperwork and sticker each individual tank that's there. So along with some expense of periodic inspections, you're also going to have the expense of training at least one person in your fleet to become a systems inspector. The cost of that can range. It depends. They do system inspector classes here in Utah. Some do them in colleges, say in Las Vegas, West Virginia. There's a few of the NGVI certified courses around. It can range. It can range in prices from say $2,500 all the way up to $4,000 or $5,000, depending on, you know, the level of training you get and where you go and how you do that. So things to consider. Was there any questions on that? If there is, don't hesitate to stop me. The next point is the Coalescent and Desiccant filters for gas supply. They're a little pricey. We have to have proper filtration in order to not introduce oil into the engines, oil and water vapor, of course. So when the municipality, let's just use Dominion right now, when they send up gas to our facility, they use compressors, and they will send down a marginal amount of oil that is trapped within the gas. When we take it from our station out of the municipality supply line, and then we compress it, and we compress it really hard, When we're getting it from a municipality, it's about 40 PSI. We're compressing it up to 3,600 PSI. The oil molecules all of a sudden now get jammed together. So oil is a concern because not only are we getting a negligible amount of oil from Dominion, we also introduce some oil and water vapor into this gas supply when we compress it. So filtration is huge. When we first started this over a decade ago, we had some oiling and water issues that would infiltrate into the engine system, and it caused sensor failures and this type of thing. So changing and dealing with your filters on your compressor or on your fuel line and then on the truck as well is huge. And they are a maintenance item. There's something that's going to keep happening as long as you have your station and trucks running. So keep that in mind as far as a cost go. I don't have the exact costs of what they are, but they're a little on the pricey side. They're not $10 or $20. So keep that in mind. Our next little point here, OEM manufacturer history and improvement. This was something that right at the beginning in the inception of natural gas here in Utah, the compressed natural gas industry was kind of scrambling to get customers and also to produce a quality product. And when they sent the products out, a lot of manufacturers were not on the same wavelength as far as what should be a standard protocol recommendation and what wasn't. So the first systems that we would get in, one manufacturer was completely different than another manufacturer, and you would sometimes have some odd things happening as far as lines rubbing or things like this right from a manufacturer. Well, that has completely changed. The OEM manufacturers have all got together and they have completely come up with a recommendation from the start to the finish of their product. And then, of course, the system inspectors that are out in the field are able to follow those recommendations and be able to make sure that those systems are safe. It looks like we've got a question here.
Perfect. Jason, you're on top of it. Okay, the question is, can you still use standard laptop and software to diagnose a check engine light, or do you need special equipment you need to read codes?
Oh, that's perfect. No, so all of these engines that we're speaking of is Cummins Westport to be exact, but yes, you're absolutely correct. You can use your laptop. The Insight program is the program that we use, and you're able to diagnose your codes. Cummins is certified throughout all of that natural gas that's on their engines. So all the sensors that are related to the natural gas inlets are all codes there. They're all taken care of through Insight. So as far as the diagnostic side of things for the technicians, yes, that's a good question. And they are all done through the laptop, exactly the same way as you've been doing for the diesel counterparts. Perfect question. I believe I touched everything on the OEM manufacturing history, and then with their improvement, we can just move on to emission standards. The emission standards of the CNG and diesel, you know, and I'll be quick about this, a lot of the emission standards going into the natural gas side of things, people thought that there was no emission standards because they burn so clean. Comparing it to a diesel, they do burn really clean, 95% better actually. So they burn really clean, but our local governments still require an emissions test. So along with our diesels, we still do emissions testing. It would be the same as it would be for, say, a gasoline car. We pull the truck up, we do a tailpipe emission standard on it and run the emissions tests for the registration once a year. Just exactly the same kind of protocol that you would run for a gasoline engine or the diesel counterparts. Although the emissions machine is looking for two different groups of molecules that the tailpipe's emitting. So keep that in mind. That was a misconception that a lot of people had, was CNG had no emission standards, which in fact it does. So I hope I answered a lot of your questions here on some of the things. And if you have any other questions, we can delve into those. I think there's one other question here.
Perfect. Yes. Who installs the tanks, and is it done at your factory or at your facility?
And that's a great question as well. And you know, both actually, we can install them, because when you're a system inspector, the system inspector takes care of all facets of install, removal, decommission, all of that. But also the factory does install the tanks. There's different manufacturers of tanks that subscribe to the body manufacturers. And so the body manufacturers will use someone specific, such as, example, we have Labrie body manufacturers, we have McNeilus body manufacturers, and those guys will say they'll subscribe to Agility, and Agility will make the package for them, the CNG tank package, and send it to them, and then the body manufacturer will mount that. So if we needed a spare tank, we would get a hold of either, say, McNeilus, or we would get a hold of Agility, and either one could help us out. So that's a great question. Is there any other questions? I hope I didn't bore you too long or was too long-winded there.
Yeah, we have one more. Does the factory cover the warranty on the tanks and system?
That's a great question as well. And yes, they do. They cover it. So what happens here is Cummins and the OEM, they end their relationship right at the low pressure. So when we inject low pressure natural gas into the engine, that's where OEM stops, and that's where Cummins picks up. So when we're discussing who has warrantyability on what, Cummins will start at the low pressure and work forward into their engine components and sensors. And then OEM has the high pressure line, the high pressure regulators, the control box, the tanks, the mounts, all of that. So yes, it would be the factory that would take care of that for you. Great question. I see Clinton piped in there with one more question, and
yep.
he asked, what is the life of the tank? So most manufacturers have a standard recommendation on that, and that's about 20 years. So 20 years, you get lifespan of, you know, constantly contracting and expanding, contracting and expanding. 20 years is amazing. The price tag on, depending on what kind of tank you're looking at, they can range from, say, $2,800 per tank all the way up to $5,000 per tank. So yeah, that's our lifespan, about 20 years. Excellent question. Is there any other questions that I can?
They're just flooding in. What is the range of your current truck in miles, as Jackson only has one station?
Gotcha. Okay, good question. So what is the range of your current trucks in mileage? Our current trucks, we have a plethora of trucks from brand new within, say, just a month or two old, all the way back to, as Matt stated, you know, 10-year-old trucks. And we're running all of them all the way through. So current miles on our trucks, we've got a 400,000 mile truck. Now, have we rebuilt that engine in 400,000 miles? Probably. We probably have. Most of the smaller ISLG engines were good for about 10,000 hours. And that kind of equated out to about 80,000 miles, 100,000 miles. But remember that refuse truck runs a lot of PTO time. So mileage isn't really a good indicator of what's happening. It's more in hours.
Hey, Jace, I think he may be referring more to how many miles per day they can get.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Well,
do you want to fill in on that?
Maybe you have that information, Matt, if you could help him out on that question.
Yeah, so the way that we build our trucks, we've got about 75 diesel gallon equivalents. And we do ours on a gallons per hour basis. So they burn anywhere from 3.5 gallons per hour to 4.5 gallons per hour. And keep in mind, these are garbage trucks. That equates to about 2 miles per gallon. They get absolutely horrible fuel economy because they're starting and stopping all day. So, you know, if you're in Jackson, and my advice to you is you can build the tank. You can make a garbage truck with 100 diesel gallon equivalent capacity. It's just more weight and real estate on your truck. I don't know if that helps.
Excellent question, though. That was a really good question. I apologize for not catching that, Anonymous there. Is there any other questions that I can help you with? We're looking good. Okay, we're looking good on questions. So that ends my presentation, and I would like to turn some time over to Mercedes, if I could, and she will introduce herself, and I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Hi, thanks, Jason. So I'm just going to wrap everything up really quick as to why are we doing this. I'm the sustainability director, so of course my number one is clean air, right? We know the natural gas vehicles emit less greenhouse gases and nitrogen oxides than their diesel counterparts. So for us, it's a no-brainer. Like Matt mentioned, our job is to clean up the environment, right? We're taking trash away, delivering it to be disposed of, and we might as well clean up our air as well. As a fleet, our biggest environmental impact is our trucks, and that contributes to the air quality. And right, as of 2019, about 52% of our garbage trucks run on CNG. I know we've added more trucks, but those are my 2019 numbers. And we have a goal of reaching an 85% CNG run fleet. So we are committed by 2024. So we are committed, and we have aggressive goals for this. And we also report to the Utah Clean Cities annually on how much fuel we have used, the composition of our fleet, and they calculate how much emissions we have saved. And so in the last 5 years, we have reduced our greenhouse gas emissions by 2,400 tons. We have also reduced 2.8 million gas gallon equivalent, which is like removing 5,500 passenger vehicles from the roads emissions-wise. So that's amazing. So yeah, I'm excited that we are still committed, and we are planning on adding more CNG vehicles to our fleet. Another reason that we do this is local fuel, right? We, as a company, ACE is really committed to kind of shopping local first. And CNG, is extracted here, or Wyoming, Colorado. We're right in it. So it makes sense. And it's also transported by pipeline, so no additional heavy duty vehicles on the roads to transport fuel, which is a plus. And then, of course, renewable fuel is another reason. We are part of that system. We are part of delivering the trash to the landfill that will eventually decompose anaerobically and be able to produce the fuel that we will use to power our trucks. So we are in this system, and for us, that's pretty awesome. I don't know if you guys think it's cool, but we think it's cool. And I'm excited for the future of this technology expanding and it coming to Utah and, be local. I know that there are a couple of landfills in Utah working on this, as well as we have an anaerobic digester. So renewable fuel is going to be more accessible. Right now, we are purchasing it from a landfill in Texas. So that's how we're getting it and transport it by pipeline. And then, as Matt mentioned, there are cost savings. So, it's not me, the hippie, telling you that there are cost savings. Matt is a fleet owner, and it made financial sense to him to switch to CNG. So, of course, I would take his word for it. And also, we have the tax incentives that you will see in a couple of slides. We'll have a resources page that has all the information to all the tax incentives that he talked about. So that's It's great. And then also more stable fuel prices. I think that's the big one for me. In the next slide, you will see a chart that shows how volatile diesel and gas are and how much more stable CNG is. And so, yeah, I know there was a question earlier, was it worth it even without the tax incentives? And I think this kind of speaks to that. But yeah, that was my quick wrap up there. Does anybody else want to jump in?
We had one question, with ACE using CNG, has it been a good marketing strategy? And have you been able to win business by marketing the clean fuel aspect?
It did take, there was one city who put it as part of their like matrix. So they use points to award a contract to whoever, you know, had the highest points. And that was one of the factors, was how sustainable our fleet was. And because we did have more CNG vehicles than our competitors, I believe that gave us more points, and we eventually won that contract. And yeah, and so like a lot of people do like to hear that we run a CNG fleet, especially, it might be the circles that I'm in with all the other sustainability people, but we're starting to see it popped up on RFPs and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's where things are moving. So I think it's a good marketing and just for future business sake choice.
Perfect. Okay, another one. Have you compared EV trucks to CNG?
Matt, I believe you did a comparison.
That's my favorite question right there. I love that, because we have an electric truck on order. We're looking to branch out to electric as well. The problem is they're double the cost of a CNG truck right now, which is pretty hard to swallow on the return. So when you calculate fuel, like I mentioned, is so cheap here, 50 cents a gallon. And when you calculate the amount of kilowatts that you're gonna need to run for a full day of electricity, the actual fuel cost is very similar to CNG, because it is just so cheap here. Compressed natural gas is so cheap in this market, in Utah specifically. So in terms of the fuel itself, it is a very, very similar cost. Electricity and CNG fuel consumed by a truck, your costs are going to be about the same. But to compress that natural gas and to get it into your trucks is also another 50 cents. And I believe the cost for electrification to install a charger is significantly less than that. So they do win on that end. I hope that answers the question.
Perfect. One other follow-up is, how about the weight of the battery compared to the CNG components?
The truck that we have on order it's about 1,500 pounds more than a CNG counterpart. For a 400 kilowatt hour, now I don't want to say it, 250 kilowatt hour system is what we have on order now. And that's in order to travel, you know, roughly 80 to 90 miles a day is what I equated that to.
Awesome. I don't see any other questions as of now. Please do, if you have any other questions, let us know. If not, we will go to the next slide, which is the resources and important links, and I'll pass this over to Tammie.
Fantastic. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Jason, Matt, and Mercedes for the great presentation. This is just our first one, so stay tuned. We're excited to follow up with a deeper dive into stations. And certainly we have plenty of information around technologies and also safety, setting up your shop. Look to Utah Clean Cities as a guide for those resources, as well as real life connections with Matt and his team. So we're here to support and help you make the right decision for you. So this is a great resource link. Utah Clean Cities is there. We also have a roadmap that was put together for the legislature, which is fantastic, heavily marking natural gas as a medium and heavy duty fuel. It's important that our legislators understand how important the fuel is to Utah, that it's a local fuel, it's Utah's fuel, and how important it is to air quality. And it's a great advanced fuel, just as you heard today. There really are no perfect fuels. All of them have their challenges, and certainly CNG has a few of themselves, but moving forward, I think we're really looking at what Matt had said about the energy source and how it actually is more efficient as far as applying a fuel at this point in technology to use natural gas. So we're excited to continue that conversation with you. And then we have the Alternative Fuel Data Center. And just real quickly, I wanted Emily to share her screen, because there is a wealth of information with the Alternative Fuels Data Center. This comes through my program through the Department of Energy, and there's also another site called Energy Efficient and Renewable Energy. But on this site, you can find whatever state you're in, and particularly in Utah. Here's our data page. But it shows you our laws and incentives. There are state laws and federal laws that you can find on this site. Here's our state ones, and then you can also find the federal. Fueling stations, which helps you locate fuelings if you're thinking about opening up or running a few vehicles and you aren't ready to invest in a station. You can look at where they are close by to you and see if that's a reasonable fit for you. Also, then we have just basic information. We have case studies that we're just finishing one up with ACE. We have case studies that we keep track of, regional fuel prices. And this is the reason why I wanted to bring this up, because I think that when we start talking about, and here's Emily showing you this great chart that you can look at the prices of fuel. Thank you for that animation. But we also really love this electric sources and vehicle emissions. And while I'm very fuel neutral, and a lot of my projects deal with all of the fuels, and so I have different experiences with all of them. And we have a lot of electrification pieces. That's the new shiny squirrel on the wall, and everyone's really excited about electrification. But we also want to point out, where does your electricity come from? And this is what makes it more exciting when you look at what a fleet like ACE is doing when they're using renewables. And we talked about renewables, and so when we look at electric and renewables, and we look at natural gas and renewables, essentially it's the same. So when we look at electricity, where does it come from? In Utah, 64% coal, right? With natural gas, solar, hydrogen, a small proportion in renewables, right? But at the end of the line, you can tap into it, say, I purchased these renewables, and so therefore I bought renewable electricity. So you can state that as part of your sustainability plan or your fleet analysis, right? Same thing with natural gas. It starts out as such a clean fuel, and this is what's exciting about natural gas. When we look at greenhouse gases, the fact that we capture those and turn them into fuel or electricity, it is such an important save for the environment, because greenhouse gases last a long time in our environment. So if we can capture them and use them either as a fuel for electricity or transportation, what a win that is. What an incredible model that is moving forward. I think it's pretty hard to beat at this point in time, to think of the waste that is made just naturally by things decomposing, our landfills, our water waste treatment plants, and other, agribusiness is a huge one that produces RNG. To be able to capture that and turn that into energy, I don't think there's anything better. And we need to have that talking point moving forward with our current legislators and currently in Utah and also on the federal level. Sorry, we've been at this since 6 o'clock this morning with it. So I've talked myself, believe it or not, dry. So anyway, here's again this piece where you can look at tax credits, and again all of these links tie you into the resources that we've talked about, and there are more, and thus more coming. So stay tuned. Emily, there's also, if any of you are kind of a federal wonk or really interested in legislation moving forward, we actually have a webinar on Friday. This coming Friday, the 15th, sorry for the late notice, but it's with a federal board that I'm associated with called Transportation Energy Partners. And we work with major utilities and manufacturers and clean cities programs across the nation to ensure that federal tax credits stay in place and that we continue to have a robust fuel portfolio. So Emily, I don't know if you have that link you can share. We can even put it into, what would you recommend the best way to share it?
Yep, I'm just chatting it to everyone right now, and you can register for that webinar on Friday.
This is where,
And then,
go ahead, Em.
oh, sorry. We did just have a few extra questions that I did want to mention before we wrapped up for today.
Yeah.
So we have actually 4. So are you going to invest in any more CNG trucks?
I can see all those. I'll go ahead and blast through some of those, Emily. Yes, we have 20 more CNG trucks on order for this year. We are absolutely investing in CNG trucks. Does ACE produce any CNG? Or sorry, does ACE produce any RNG? No, we do not actually produce any RNG. We don't have any existing landfills in Utah right now. We have one. We have Transjordan, which is actually producing landfill gas, but they sell it to different sources, to my knowledge. So no, we do not actually produce any. The way RNG works is the landfill will put in a tremendous amount of infrastructure to convert it to gas, and then they'll sell the credits. So this landfill in Texas, we're buying their gas essentially. So yes, we are only using RNG. We're only consuming it. And the way it works is, all gas is piped into the pipeline, and everybody uses each other's gas. We don't get it directly from Texas, unfortunately, but the way the way the credits work is you have to actually have an end user to get the credits. We are the end user. And the slides could be shared. Is up to Emily. By me.
Of course, yes. Well, I will share the slides, and we're also recording this, so we'll be sending that out for all of you as well. I will just go to this last one, and please do contact Utah Clean Cities and ACE Recycling if you do have any additional questions. We are going to be doing a part 2 to this, and we'll be showing some kind of specifics and how to actually convert to a CNG RNG fleet. Tammie, did you have anything else you'd like to say?
I just want to thank everyone. Thank you for being here. Matt and your team, Jason and Mercedes, thank you so much. Thank you, Emily. We appreciate everyone who came today, and stay tuned. And again, look at Clean Cities. Consider joining our Green Fleet program. We're here to help bring resources and information to your decision-making process so you can make the best decision for your fleet here in Utah or in our region. I know we saw someone up from Wyoming, so thanks for joining us. Take care and be safe, and Happy New Year to everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.